Hello, welcome to Revelator Alf. Hello, I'm live. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Anyway, hopefully it will. I'm actually testing out a multi-camera system. So if you can hear me and you're watching, give us a thumbs up or say hello, whatever it is. So I'm just going to swap between different cameras and show you the different layouts as well. What I've got here, I'm also got a front camera because I want to show you directly behind me as well. I will change this as we go along in future live streams. Anyway, right, it is absolutely freezing in here today. I'm kind of doing this but I'm not really prepared for it in many ways. And I want to kind of talk about home mechanics or home motorcycle mechanics specifically, and what you can do to make your life easier, and I suppose the kind of things to consider as well a little bit. When I talk about motorcycle mechanics in all my videos, you know, how to fix things or what to consider, I never really talk about it from a professional technician or mechanics point of view, because I think actually for you guys, most of you are not going to be professional mechanics or technicians, and you don't, you know, you haven't had a whole lifetime of working on bikes. So we're kind of on the same level in that respect. Many of you will never have worked on bikes before, or don't know where, you know, the first thing about them, or even know where to start. So it's kind of like trying to meet people at a particular level, and also trying to show people, you know what, you can do this. And I've got a couple of videos coming up about this as well. One of the things about working on your bike at home, it really comes down to tools, what kind of tools you got, obviously the knowledge. But a big thing that I talk about as well is confidence. Have you got the confidence to do it? And sometimes it's not that easy to do. Sometimes you haven't got the confidence to do it. And also you just haven't got the tooling to be able to do it. One of the first things that I always say to anybody is get yourself a workshop manual or an owner's manual or a service manual for your particular bike. Then you're going to have to start working on the tools. But there's no point in starting any particular project until you've got the tools, right? Until you've got the tools to be able to do that particular job. Now, let's say lots of older bikes used to sell you a motorcycle with a toolkit. Most modern motorcycles now don't sell you a motorcycle with a toolkit in it. There are a few, but not many. So what happens is that you actually end up riding a brand new motorcycle, for example, and there's no way of you being able to even do the tiniest little thing on that bike. What you actually need to do, you need to start carrying your own tools with you if you really want to do that. I don't particularly like this look here, by the way. It's a bit delayed anyway. So you need to kind of start building up tools. Once you start building up tools, either to carry with you on the bike or to have at home, then you can actually start undertaking the simplest of tasks. And when I talk about the simplest of tasks, talking about general maintenance of your motorcycle, general servicing of your bike, which really anybody can do, but actually it really depends on, again, it comes back to this confidence, and it also comes back to the tools that you've got. Nacho, hello there. Hello, I'm the only one here, video and audio. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I will improve on the video in the future. So this is merely a big test anyway. But thank you for joining, Nacho from Spain, I believe you are. Let me know where you are. Buenos días, Nacho. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Está bien? Bueno, see, my Spanish is coming on strong. So anyway, you know, this is all about tools. It's all about confidence and what you can do. there are so many videos out there. There's going to be so, let's say if you've got a Harley Davidson, there are so many videos about Harley Davidsons. There are so many videos about Suzuki's, Kawasaki's, whatever. What I always think whenever I watch some of these other videos is actually a lot of that information may be correct, but also it's about opinions. It's about what that person's opinion is. Sometimes they're just showing you by the book what you're supposed to do, which is great if you've got the tools to do it. If you haven't got it, then you're kind of stuck. You can't do it. A lot of what I like to do at home, in my home workshop, or when I'm working on my bike, is actually look at a problem and say, okay, do I have the right tooling for it? And if I don't have the right tooling for it, can I make a tool, or can I use another tool to do it, achieve the same results? Richard, hello, how are you? Mr. Drake, how are you? Daryl, no, you're here quietly too. I got you. So it's all about just trying to find a solution, and that's when I work on bikes throughout, however long I've been working on bikes, however times I've built bikes, built custom bikes or hardtail choppers, that kind of thing. It's about, for me, it's about just getting the job done, finding out what works. And sometimes you have to stop the project. Sometimes you have to delay the whole process until you get a decent run at a particular project. So one of the things I want to talk about today is kind of finding things that at home that you could use for another project. So let's say, for example, I'm going to show you this. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Look, right. This is a car coil compressor. You basically just compress the coils, the springs on your suspension. You have one either side, whatever. Actually, on another channel which I had, and I think it's still up there, the video, Dura Rider Media, which was related to a motorcycle magazine which I used to publish. I showed that you could use this to actually compress your rear suspension springs on your motorcycle. If you take the shock absorber off, the shock off with the spring, and you can actually service them just by using this. Yeah, it's a little bit hairy, let's say. You've got to be very careful with it, but it does actually work. And this is kind of when I talk about doing motorcycle mechanics, it's about finding, if you can find the right tool, fantastic. If you can't find the right tool, then it's actually about trying to get something else that works as well. The problem that you'll find, let me just change the angle here. The problem that you may have the older you get is, I'm wearing these gloves, by the way, because as I say, it's absolutely freezing in here. The problem that you'll get, if you're anything like me, you tend to start to gain tools or gain little tools for doing particular types of jobs. So let's say you get yourself a pair of tire irons, right? And then you think, oh, I don't particularly like those tire irons. You get yourself another pair of tire irons. You might only use them once, twice, because you're running tubed tires, right? You've got tubed tires. That means that if you're riding along, especially for me when I was going off-road and everything, if I was riding off-road and I'd be away from civilization, in inverted commas, what I would want to be able to do is carry it in a tube with me, be able to take the wheel off, take the tire off, put a new tube back in, and away I go. Well, if you stop riding with tubed tires, you're running tubeless tires, which I am now, guess what? These are just in the workshop, not doing anything, okay? It's almost like you start gathering tools left, right, and centre. I mean, this is not this particular hole saw, but then I had a pack of hole saws, and I only actually needed one tiny one, or smaller one, I should say, not tiny, it's about that big, for a particular custom job which I was doing. I was actually building an electrical box for a hardtail chop, and I needed to drill a big diameter hole to put the ignition key through it, as it were. Well, I bought this and I've never used it again. I only used it that once. So you tend to build up an arsenal of tools. You tend to build up a way of trying to achieve a job. You have to get the right tool for it, and then you don't really use that tool again until you do. And what happens is, there we go. And what happens is that you forget if you're anything like me, you forget that you've got the tool as well. So and then you think, okay, I really need that job, and then you start opening drawers left, right, and center, and you think, oh, okay, there it is. I found it. I've been looking for that for the last 4 years, but there we go. So having the right tool for the job really helps, but it doesn't mean that you can't always achieve something. All it is, it always comes down to this confidence. When I talk about doing particular jobs, I am always wary of people or anybody that say that you can only do a particular job, mechanical job on a motorcycle in one particular way. Actually, there isn't. There's usually, if you dig a little deeper, if you usually kind of, read between the lines a little bit, there's actually more than one way to do it. Now, if you look at a professional, especially a freelance mechanic, okay, what they'll do, now let's just say they specialize on working on pickup trucks, let's say, for example, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in and they need to have something fixed on their, I don't know, car, whatever. Well, they may be able to apply what they know on pickup trucks to cars. They'll just find the right tool or a similar tool to be able to do it. Or they might use a bit of wood here to jam something in there, and it works. And it's not official. It's not by a service manual. It's just that they're applying what they know to another situation. And that's kind of what I do a lot of the time. I kind of apply what I've known from other situations to, let's say, working on bikes, working on cars, doing stuff around the home, that kind of thing. So you have lots of different things that can stop you doing the job or working on your bike. As I say, the tooling, the confidence, the knowledge, all that kind of stuff. But also the space. You might not have the space. Somebody in a previous video, I don't know if you can see. Oh yeah, you can. You can see the motorcycle lift here, which I've got in the workshop. There, it's very compact, and I can lift up the whole Harley on it. Somebody was asking me, and I forgot what your name is. Sorry, I do apologise. They're asking, can you produce a video to show how to do that? Well, I could, but there are other videos out there. Just bear in mind that a lot of the videos that will show how to use that, most of them only show you how to use it from one side, when in actual fact you can use it from both sides of the motorcycle. Also, most videos, which I did a bit of research on them, you've got to strap the bike down. Make sure you strap that bike down because it will wobble. And also, you've got to make sure that the surface underneath is absolutely fine. However, so with this I got this because it's space saving for me. If I had a much bigger workshop or a double workshop or whatever, then I would have a proper motorcycle lift, and I would have just a scissor lifter beneath the bike to lift it up, because that would actually make working on the bike a lot easier. The other thing I want to talk about motorcycle lifts or particular tools, let's say, just because you've got it, it doesn't mean that you need to use it. And I'm going to give you an example here. Let's say, let me try and bring this one in here. There we go. Right, I'm going to turn this around like that. Hopefully you can see the motorcycle lift there. You don't need a motorcycle lift for general bike maintenance when you're working on the engine. All you need that for is really mostly when you're working on suspension or when you're working on wheels. anything like that, or you know, or the drivetrain, you know, as in chain or belt or whatever you've got. So you need to be able to lift the bike up to release that pressure on there. Let's say you're doing wheel suspension, steering head, bearings, that kind of thing. That's kind of all you'd ever really need that for. And in fact, that's all you'd ever really need a big motorcycle lift that you'd ride the bike on, unless you're doing a big full build project. But actually, I've got to say, I've done full build projects before, no problem at all. And I didn't have a motorcycle lift. I just did it on the floor. I was just actually had the bike supported. In fact, actually, let me just do that. There we go. Actually, a lot of the bikes that I've worked on before or just built before, I'd actually have wooden boards, transport pallets on the back, like this bench, what this bench is made from. Let me quickly show you here. If I can kind of do that. Can you see the transport pallets here? Yeah. What you do, you just build up a platform, and then you get somebody else to help you with it. Obviously, lift it up, and you can actually put the bike on top of a raised platform, and then you could work on a bike, secure it down, and work on a bike. So you don't need a full motorcycle lift. You don't need you know, all these tools. You can find some other way. Lucas, hello there. How are you? Hi there. Any tips on rear brake pads replacement? Good. I'm going to talk about that on a 2020 Softail Street Bob with ABS. Right. Okay. So this kind of brings me on to lots of other things as well. So you don't always need the big tools, and you don't and even if you do get the tools, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to use them. So let's say the motorcycle lift, for example, you'd only need that in specific circumstances. Well, let me rephrase that. You can use it all the time. But what I'm saying is you don't need to use it all the time. It's just like having, here we go. This is a classic one, right? This I got ages ago. And what I was doing, I was looking at, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute, if anybody knows. Does anybody know what this is, by the way? Can you see that? Don't know if anybody can see that. There we go. Does anybody know what that is? Right. I got this a while ago, and it was basically to say, because I was going to show how to remove a particular component on a bike. Let's say this is a tool, and what happened was I broke my other one, so I had to get a replacement. Anyway, I got this, and it's a different make, and all the equipment that I use or I feature on videos, it's all on the product links page on the website. Go to the website, you'll see product links on under one of the banners there, one of the headings, and it's all there. Anyway, it is, yes, it's a piston puller, brake puller. That's right, Sonics. Thanks very much. No, not a wire stripper. Yeah, but it kind of looks like a wire stripper. And I think you could modify this to be a bit of a wire stripper as well. I like that. That's good thinking. But hey, yeah, so I got this. And I think, actually, do you know what? Once you've taken your brake caliper off, and let's say you need to work on you need to strip down your brake caliper, you need to give it a good old service. This is not going to be for a new bike. This is going to be for an older bike, right? Or problems with your brake calipers. What you've got, let's say you've got two pistons or four pistons, depends what's up. You got two pistons that are pushing the brake pad towards the disc. Okay, they're pushing the brake disc. Well, let's say when you take the brake pad out, then you need to strip down the whole brake caliper. You need to pull those pistons out. Well, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Either what you can do is actually don't disconnect the brake hoses. You actually just keep on pumping your brakes until that pushes out the brake piston. Or if they're completely seized in there for whatever reason, you're going to strip them apart, right? You have to get them away. You can put lots of lubrication spray in there as well. You actually get this inside the piston, and then you open it up like You kind of open it up so it actually forms against the inside of the piston, so it's really tight, and then you try and wiggle it out. Basically, that's how you do it, right? So anyway, I was going to do a demonstration of that with some other things, which I'm going to talk about later. But unfortunately, I didn't get the part. I didn't get the brake caliper, which I wanted. But that's it. As a side, what I was going to do, or what I'm trying to do right now for the channel, I'm trying to get lots of different bike components either donated to me or I can get on the cheap, so that I can have a display or a workshop of different items to show you how you can do it, and either do live sessions like this or do particular videos on it. The problem with doing videos on my bike, let's say, I will only make videos on the bike if I'm actually doing work to the bike. I don't necessarily see the point of actually breaking the engine apart, let's say, just to make a video when it doesn't need it. You know, the kind of, I do have this philosophy: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, you shouldn't be starting to open and close engines or any component on a bike if it's still working well. If it's still working well, leave it alone. So I wanted to get other bikes. Actually, I've been in touch with Harley Davidson Europe here in the UK this very week, asking them, have they got any 107, 114 engines that they could give me, whether they're working or not, for this very reason. Unfortunately, they said, no, you're not having that, which was a real shame. But anyway, so that was the kind of strategy which I'm still aiming for. I am looking for a bigger kind of site, a bigger workshop. That has been going on for a long time, but I say one of the big problems I've got is the costing in this area as well. But anyway, right, let's I'm kind of rambling all over the place anyway, so I do apologize if I am. Let's just talk a bit about brakes then. I kind of want to make this a general thing about motorcycle home maintenance, but hopefully I just want to show you a couple of things that you probably always do need if you're going to start working on your own bike, or if you are working on your own bike already. Get yourself a good socket set, really. Get yourself a good set of spanners as well, right? Socket set, spanners. That's pretty, and they're relatively cheap to get. The next thing to get is a torque wrench. Yeah. Torque wrench. There we go. And I've talked about this in the past. You have different sizes. There are bigger sizes. I've basically got two sizes to cover different jobs. Those are pretty much the most fundamental things to do. If anybody has ever talked about repairing bikes or building bikes for the first time, what they'll probably tell you is this: it's not necessarily the big tools that is going to cost you a lot of money. I'll tell you what's going to cost you a lot of money, and this kind of relates to what I was talking about with these kind of tire irons or tire changing levers. It's actually getting all the little small components that you'll need. You need one electrical component, or one little fixing, or one little circlip, let's say, or one fuse, or one split pin, right? Sorry, you can't. Split pin or cotter pin, you know, all that kind of stuff. And you have to buy a pack of it. So you buy a pack of it because you need it for that particular job, and then you may never need it again, or certainly might need it for a lot longer. That's why a professional workshop will always be able to work at a reduced economies of scale, because they've got all this in stock, right? They've got all this in stock, so they can fix a bike, build a bike, potentially cheaper than you can do it for, because they've already got the tools. If you've already got the tools, then fine. But beware, anything that you do, if you haven't got the right tools, or if you haven't got those little bits and pieces, and it's just like finishing off a house or finishing off any project, it's always little fixtures and fittings. Those are the ones that cost the most. Anyway, let's get, should we answer this question then? So Lucas Girdler, any tips on the rear brake pad replacement? Okay, so first of all, get the bike level. Make sure that the bike is level. Lift it up on its off its side stand, off its jiffy stand. Put a block of wood underneath the side stand and rest it on there. If you watch some of my other videos where I'll show you how to do that, that's if you haven't got a motorcycle lift or anything like that. Okay. The next thing to do is if you are going to take replace your brake pads, what you're going to need to do is a couple of things. You're going to have to undo your hanger pins, and then you're going to have to remove the caliper from the disc as well. With the Softails, the 2018 upwards Softails, you can actually remove the caliper with the wheel and the brake disc still in situ. Okay, you can, but there's hardly any room at all. There's hardly any room at all, but you can do it. So one of the first things that you need to do is on the brake master cylinder by the foot pedal at the front, just undo the screws a little bit, release a bit of pressure. You don't need to take the whole thing off, just release a bit of pressure. The next thing you need to do is that, so you've got the bike level, you've undone the screws of the brakes master cylinder at the front, you've just released it so any pressure can come back in, come back out. Then you go to the back of the bike. The first thing you want to do is actually undo the hanger pins, and the hanger pins are 2 bolts which actually go through the top of the caliper, and they go through your brake pads and they hold your brake pads in place. Okay, those 2 ones you want to do. Now there's an interesting thing on that, and this kind of talk about this as well. Some motorcycles out there will talk about Richard, yes, thank you so much. Thank you. You are right. You've got my attention. I liked all the best. Well, thanks very much. Kate, the same. Thank you very much. Some motorcycles out there, some motorcycles I've had in the past, talk about brake pad hanger pins or bolts that you need to add thread lock to them. All right. I have never applied thread lock to any hanger pin. I just don't know why people would do that. The problem is mostly you need to torque them down. They need to be tight up to a specific specification. But what you do want to do is add some anti-seize, anti-slip grease, copper grease, whatever, to just the thread part of those hanger pins. Okay, that's what you want to do, and then torque them down again. If you go to the Harley Parley page on my website, all the torque figures are there for any job on the bike. It's all there, so go and help yourself. Okay, so you've just loosened the hanger pins. Then you take off the 2 caliper bolts, Then you can remove the caliper. Then you can remove the hanger pins. Now, the reason why you loosen the hanger pins before you take the caliper off, because you can work with the motorcycle to help you with the leverage. Otherwise, you're going to have to try and hold the caliper, and then it doesn't quite work. So release those off first. Remove the caliper. Then you're going to take the hanger pins out. There's a spring there as well. Make sure you can see where that goes as well, because you need to replace that, put that back in. And then take the pads out. Then put the new pads back in. Okay, here's another thing which used to happen years ago, and then some people, I think, still try and carry this on, but they shouldn't be doing it. On the back of the brake pad, some people used to put grease or copper grease on the back of those, just so that they would be a little bit slipperier, and they wouldn't, anytime, let's say, brake pad, if it rattled, it would be rattling against a sticky surface, so it wouldn't make any noise. You shouldn't do that, really. Okay, one of the reasons why they used to do that was to stop that, but also is kind of debunked straight away. And this is years ago, but people were still kind of using it. Putting copper grease. Look, I'll hold my hands up. Back in the day, I kind of did it for a while as well. I thought, right, okay, yeah, that sounds right. I put a bit of copper grease in the back. I didn't even really know why I was doing it at the time. I just heard somebody tell me, yeah, put a bit of grease on the back and away you go. No need to do it because there's no reason why the back of the pad needs to be lubricated at all, the metal part, because all it's going to go is sit against the hard caliper or the piston side of the caliper, and all it's going to do is push that. That's all it needs to do. Some calipers now have a little some pads have a little heat shield on there as well, and all grease does is it attracts dirt. So the last thing you want to do is actually have any copper grease on there. Anyway, so you take your caliper off in that. You take your pads out, you put your new pads in, but the problem here is, as we know, new pads are going to be thicker, right? They're going to have a thicker side to them, so you're going to have to push the piston back in to make room. Now, okay, if you watch one of my earlier videos when I talked about the front brake pistons on the front brake caliper, how to change those. You could use, okay, there are little tools like this. I got this as a bit of a joke, actually. These are piston spreaders, as it were. Basically, you stick this in your brake caliper. The piston's there, and the other side of the caliper is there, and you basically just push these apart, and it will push the pistons back in. So that saves you a little job. Actually, you don't even need to do that. What you can do actually is, it depends on the piston, it depends on the caliper which you have. If you can change, some bikes you can actually change the pads with the caliper still in place. You don't need to change anything, you don't need to move anything. So you can use a screwdriver and just pull on either side of the screwdriver and pull the pistons back like that. Some you can. On the Harley, you can't. So basically you need to take it apart, take it off, and then push those pistons back in, either with leverage of something like that, or using a tool like this to push them apart. Whichever works. Basically, you've got to make room for those new pads. You put the new pads in, you put the spring back in, then you work the caliper back into the wheel, slide it onto the disc, and then line everything up. So you want those hanger pins in. Apply some copper grease to those hanger pin threads. That's all, but don't tighten them up. Just to put them in there. The next thing you do, you line up the two caliper bolts, as it were. Put one. Only one of them, as you look at it, the left-hand side, only one of them has thread lock on it. The other one doesn't, which is really interesting. For the Harley, this is. Now, you could have thread lock for both. We're talking general terms here of all calipers. You could, but for the Harley, I checked the other day, actually, it is just purely on one, which is interesting. Look, the question is, why don't you use thread lock on all of them? Well, the problem is that you could easily, you're trying to get those hanger pins off, let's say, you could easily break them. You only need one caliper bolt to be thread locked. You could have both. It depends on the setup that you've got. You could have both on there. I would say just have one. You could have two. It doesn't make a difference. I've got to say, most of the caliper bolts and everything that I put on the past, never applied thread lock at all. Never applied it. Let me just come over to this side as well. But yeah, put copper grease. So hopefully that has answered your question there. But it is a procedure to put those. Put the caliper bolts back on, torque those back up with some thread lock. Then you wind in the hanger pins, torque those up, and because you've pushed back the pistons, that's why you release the cap off the master cylinder at the front. Make sure you probably want to put a rag around it anyway, just in case some dot forward does actually spill out of there. But if it doesn't, then that's great. Just check the level, do everything back up, you're golden. It doesn't interfere with ABS at all. Okay, there's no reason why you can't flush your brakes and also change brake pads, because you haven't introduced any air into the system. Therefore, the ABS won't be affected. So that's it. That's it. Richard Perry, Half, I've learned so much from watching videos like your channel. I do most of my own work on my track now. There you go. Great. That's it. A lot of it comes down to, anytime I see something new on a bike or anything, wrong camera, sorry. Anytime I see something new on a bike, I just take my time. I just really methodical about how I do it. And we all have those moments where you either forget or you're not too sure how to do something, and then you just but you've got to have that kind of reference material. A lot of people these days will look at YouTube as that ultimate reference material, and I kind of wrote a blog piece about this a couple of weeks ago, in that you shouldn't always believe what people tell you on YouTube, because a lot of it is down to opinion, unless it's fact, unless it's backed up by fact. And this is what I say when people make comments or make statements, either on my videos or any other video, where you've got to, if you're going to make a statement or a contrary statement, then you need to back it up with facts. Either I'm wrong, or you're wrong, or we're both wrong, or somebody else is right. But so what I'm saying is, when you have reference material and all you're using is YouTube, then one of the things I would suggest you do, always look in the comments. Look at the comments and gauge what the general feeling is. But don't just look at one opinion, look at lots of opinions. But your datum for starting anywhere is always the service manual. But bear this in mind, even service manuals get it wrong from time to time. Unfortunately, they do. That's the way it is. Daryl, hello, and I'm just going to switch camera here so you can see me better. Oops, no, didn't want to do that. There we go. Daryl, I assume copper grease help reduce any screeching noise. Well, it kind of does, doesn't it? I mean, it says from that point of view, it does. But the problem is you're going to attract dirt on there, and also you're going to, let's say, kind of hotter temperatures as well. There's a real risk of anything that you put on the back of your brake pads. It could contaminate your brake pads as well, which is the last thing you want to do. You don't want any oily grease, let's say, dripping down either onto your disc or going onto your brake pads. That's it. That's one way of ensuring that your brakes are going to fail when you really need them. So that's it. John P-Flug, in my honest opinion, if you're not mechanically inclined, don't perform any maintenance or attempt to repair your motorcycle. Something simple as an oil filter change can lead to disaster. Do you know what? There is merit to that. A freelance mechanic is not a professional. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe we're getting lost in translation here, but I think a lot of mechanics can work for themselves, can be freelance, and they are professional mechanics. So I'm not sure what you're talking about there. But no, it depends. It depends on, if I always say this, if you don't have the confidence, if you don't have the knowledge to be able to do something, even the simplest of tasks, then yeah, sure, seek advice. But there's something, I've always said, anybody can learn anything. Anybody can be taught how to do anything. So I kind of agree with you, and I kind of disagree with you as well, because you can learn how to do the simple task. But you're absolutely right, is that if you don't do something right, then you could make a real mess of whatever you're trying to do, and you can cause big problems. And that's why you need that reference material. That's why there are service manuals. That's why there are workshop manuals, so that you know step by step what to do. Step by step. Lots of YouTube videos, and my YouTube videos as well. they're designed to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. Sometimes, talk about different nuances or different ways of doing it or different tools that you can use to achieve the same thing. Or sometimes purely show you how to do this procedure. Because sometimes you can read something in a book, in a service manual, a workshop manual, but actually doing it is something completely different. It's a different thing altogether. And for some people, they're not very well. Yeah, they haven't really mastered that ability. They don't really know how to use the tools properly and everything. But again, that all comes down to having confidence, being shown how to use a tool, all that kind of stuff. One thing I wanted to talk about now is consumables. There we go. Sorry. There we go. Well, I suppose I call it consumables. I don't know what you'd call it. I suppose there are different names for different things. Oils, greases, that kind of thing. Here's what I was kind of talking about before. This is I was building a right. So 2-3 years ago, I can't remember how long it was. 2 or 3 years ago, I got this idea that I wanted to build. You might have seen it in my archives. I'd only made a couple of videos. I didn't really make much more of it. I wanted to build a diesel-powered motorcycle. I got the engine, and I'm not sure how many videos I made about that, but basically I stripped down the engine completely and then put all that back together. I'd never worked on a small diesel engine before, worked on big diesel engines before, not small diesel engine. So I found a service manual and I kind of had to read between the lines of what it was. Anyway, cut long story short, I broke it all down, put it all back together. I got it working here. I bench tested it and I got it running as well. So there's a whole series of videos about trying to get this thing to run. Anyway, the whole idea is that I had an old Honda Goldwing frame, a running rolling chassis. Anyway, so one of the jobs of that rolling chassis was to repair the front forks. So I had to do a full front fork rebuild, right? Strip and rebuild. And also what it was, the fork stanchions, the fork tubes were kind of pitted, so I had to go and send them off to be hard chromed to be returned. Anyway, long story short, I am waffling, but I got some new fork oil for that job. Right, so as I was going through what's on my shelf just now to prepare for this, I suddenly think, oh look, there we go, fork oil. That's where it got to. So I used about half of it, and I thought, you know what, I'll keep it up there. I'm sure I'll do another fork rebuild job soon. I could just use that, no problem. Anyway, I haven't. Do you know what? I actually don't know what the life limit on this is. Does anybody know how long this lasts? It should last a long time. But you know what? If I was doing another fork job, I would just go and get some fresh fork oil that's replaced. I'm sure, because this isn't sealed anymore, it's absorbed a bit of moisture as well. So do you know what? In the bin it goes. But you know, there's lots of other things. You know, I'm actually going to be doing an air filter change on my bike soon, and I think I'm going to go for a K&N. Anyway, K&N air filter oil. Periodically, you're going to need to do it, service it. Well, this was on my shelf from another job which I did a few years ago, another rebuild of a bike, and I used pod filters on those, and you know, just oiled those up with that. Again, these are the kind of things that you do. You know, you kind of build up things in your workshop or your home or whatever, and then you know, you kind of you find that you use it a little bit later on. Obviously, WD-40, everybody knows. Brake cleaner, everybody knows. What I also tend to do is that I get other products from other uses, and I try those out as well. Other tools which I use, would you believe, and whenever I go to right now we can't do it, I know, so I'm kind of talking about in the past. I'll go to like swap meets, or they'll call in America. Over here we call them car boot sales, and you always come across people who are selling tools or selling bits and pieces. Through my old job, I came into contact with people who had lots of different little tools, medical tools, for example. And actually, a lot of these are excellent for picking out things, whatever. So, you know, I gather tools from lots of different places, different uses. And I think actually I could use that just for getting that particular thing. So, you know, my advice to anybody is, if you're going to start building up tools, don't necessarily just think that you have to buy motorcycle specific tools or automotive tools. Always keep your mind open for any kind of tool that you might be able to adapt or modify to use, you know, in a particular application. Right, Lucas, going back to my rear brake question, is there any special procedure required due to having ABS? No, there isn't. If you're doing brake pads, no, ABS doesn't. Not a factor. As I said to you, as long as you're not breaking the brake lines, as in taking off brake lines, as long as you're not introducing air into the system, there should be no problem at all. No problem at all. Lucas Girdley, oh, super sticker, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. That's really appreciated. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Simon. Most independent bike mechanics are very good. They are, yes. The ones that I've known now. They have to stay in business. They don't have dealership to fall back on if something goes wrong. Yeah. Look, I mean, I kind of wrote another piece about this as well, about starting up your own motorcycle business. I'm sure what's going to happen now going forward is that lots of dealerships are going to close. Lots of big garages, lots of workshops, whatever, may close. Lots of people might be thinking, I'm going to go out alone. One of the things that when people fail at business or fail at setting up businesses, it's not the actual, you know, the wrenching part of it. It's not the skill part of it that they fail at. What they fail at is actually making what they do into a proper business, and then addressing all the other business problems, you know, like paperwork, taxes, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I kind of wrote about in that is to say, actually, sometimes what you need to do is, let's say you can do a whole host of things. You can work on, I don't know, all sorts of motorcycles. You can do Kawasaki's, you know, Suzuki's, whatever. You can do whatever. You can do all engine breakdowns, all that kind of stuff. You can do work on any part of the bike because you've been doing it for years and years. Because you do that, if you set yourself up as that person who can do anything, that might be great, and you might get lots of people coming in saying, we want to give you my bike to work on, all this kind of stuff. But you've got to see how much that you can charge for a particular job, and also how long it's going to take you to do it. So the problem is that people are going to face and say, well, let's say it's going to take you a week to fully break down an engine, put it all back together. I'm just making this up. I don't know how long it's going to take a particular person, but let's just say it takes a week. And let's just say you're going to charge like £500 to do that. But in the same time, lots of other people want to come to you to say, look, we want you to work on our bike and everything and fix this and fix that. And you just say, look, I'm a one-man band. I haven't got time to do it. Guess what? Those people are going to go off. However, if let's say you kind of only did engines, then people would know they only come to you for engines. Let's just say if you only did suspension, as a starting principle, as a starting way to start up in business, that might be a better way to do it. So you don't have to be a master of anything or a master practitioner of every aspect to start working on bikes or to set yourself up in business. You can just do a particular thing, you know. Simon Higgy, last for ages. If the cap got the cap on, it's not hygroscopic, like brake fluid, get it out the bin. No, I'm going to keep it in the bin. Actually, that's my other uses bin. That's not the bin. That's my other uses bin. You see, never throw away, always recycle. So that's that. Anyway, so I think there's lots of uses there. Right, so I want to talk a little bit about, let me just change the angle here. How are we liking the angles, by the way? Do we like all that, or would you prefer just one angle? Right, this, there we go. Can't really see. There we go. Look, thread lock. Yeah, Loctite. They're different types of thread lock, of course, different makes. I'm just using this one. This is probably what most people reference, of course. Now, what are people's thoughts about using thread lock all the time? Because I have my doubts whether we should be using it all the time, and is it absolutely necessary all the time? If we kind of go back all the way, it's a fantastic product, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Whether you're using blue, whether you're using red thread lock, you know, for blue is the medium kind of thread lock. Red is the harder one. Daryl, love you at any angle. Good man. Thank you. Thanks for that. Really, really appreciate that. But you know, you've got a medium strength and a higher strength, of course. But there's lots of different strengths and different applications, different engineering applications for these thread locks. But also, I think you've got to look at, well, in the old days, how did they do it? How did they stop something from coming undone doing that? So let's just say you have a bolt, nut and bolt, for example, that you want to stick in something, you want to tighten up, you want to torque it down, and let's just say you actually want to make sure that in the future, when you take that bolt out, it's not seized. So you're not going to use copper grease. Guess what? You haven't got any copper grease, so you're just going to use general purpose grease, right? The one that you put through a pump and you put it through a grease nipple, and away you go. It's all good, right? So you torque it down with some grease. That means it's nice and oily in there, right? Okay, I'm not going to talk about temperature, because temperature is a different thing and everything. You can have different greases, different oils that will work better under different temperatures. Exactly the same with sort of thread locks and stuff like that. But let's just say you've put that bolt through and you put some grease on it, whatever, so it'll come out next time. The problem is, if you don't secure that somehow, then what's going to happen is that bolt can work itself out. So there are a couple of ways in which you could do it. Well, you could put washers there, and spring washers as well. So when you tighten it down, there's always a load on the nut or the bolt, so that will stop it coming out. There's no guarantee it will stop it coming out. There's another way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to what we call wire locking. So you could wire lock the nut or the bolt or whatever, so that it stops it undoing. There's another way of doing it as well. Let's say if you've got a nut on the end of a thread, so the nut goes over the bolt. What you can have is a drilled hole through it, and you put a split pin through it. Where do you normally find a split pin? On a motorcycle? Yes, on the rear wheel, right? On the rear wheel spindle nut as well. You normally find some kind of split pin there that you can take the split pin out and away you go, because that stops it, because they don't really need to apply thread lock, because you're just torquing it down to a specific set. Put that and away you go. Escosset, hello there, how are you? I use thread lock mostly on fasteners that I both can't see access easily, and if they loosen leads to something catastrophic. Well, look, that's the whole purpose of the thread lock, isn't it? Absolutely right, absolutely right. And that's why I'm certainly not suggesting to anybody that if your maintenance manual, whatever, says to use thread lock, that you don't use thread lock. You just think, oh, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm certainly not suggesting that. All I'm saying is that there are lots of different ways to do it. And in the past, before thread lock was invented, let's say, you could still achieve it. And in fact, in many applications, they still do that. Other engineering applications, other engine applications, whatever, I don't know, big industrial, big machine plants, tractors, diggers, all that kind of stuff. They can use all that. Aviation is another one that they use a lot of wire locking, for that kind of thing. So there's lots of different ways. Whilst they still use they use thread lock, but they can use a combination of things as well. Anyway, let me just change this angle. There we go. Right. There we go. Brilliant. Right. So the other thing I want to talk about that. So there's lots of things that you can build up over time, and sometimes you can use them in different applications, whatever. So I was watching something the other day, and they're talking about thread lock and should you use thread lock when on engine components. And well, again, it's kind of like what Mr. Gossett was saying here. It really depends on, well, should you be using thread lock or not? Well, if it says that you should, then you really should use it. If it's an internal part, for sure. I think, let's say if you're using engine casing bolts, well, you could use on top of that, you could use spring washers on the bolt head, going, if you get the right size of it. The problem is that doesn't ensure that the bolt goes all the way in the way it should. So therefore your torque setting might be too much for the amount of thread that's on there. Can you remember, lots of boffins have worked this out, with science and maths and engineering and all that kind of stuff, to work out this length bolt is required with this much thread, with this amount of copper grease or this amount of thread lock, on there, and that's going to hold it in place. So you can't suddenly start changing things and expecting a different result. It may work, but you're kind of going what is supposed to be, you're supposed to be doing. Anyway, so excuse me. So there's lots of things you can build up. There's lots of stuff on the shelf that you can have. And when you want to work on your bike or follow a certain procedure, it's almost like you want to have all your ducks in a row. You want to make sure everything's laid out, be methodical how you're going to do it. Because the last thing you want to do is be halfway through a job and you find that you haven't got the right tool or you haven't got this. And look, hands up, there's been so many times when I've started a job on a car, on a bike, on a tractor, whatever it is. My background is, by the way, is in my adult life, I kind of went in a totally different direction. But in my youth and coming up to my early 20s or mid 20s, it's kind of a farming background. So anybody who knows anything about farming will know that people who work on farms, or you work on work on a building site or a big industrial machinery site, you tend to be able to turn your hand to lots of different things, and you're always finding fixes for different scenarios. So you kind of work with big tools usually, and big, monkey wrenches and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, you kind of, then you start applying what you know there, what you grew up knowing, to different things. And if you've got an interest in mechanics or interest in engines, which I did, I mean, at 10 years old, I was stripping down two-stroke still engines, little agricultural engines for working on those. So, and then obviously, you build on from there. So you kind of have lots of different applied knowledge from other areas, and then you start applying it to motorcycle mechanics. So then when I started getting into my bikes at 10, 11, and then I could start working on I was working on my own bike at a very early age. And yes, so many times you mess up, so many times because back in the day, guess what? I didn't have a service manual. It was all about, okay, if I do that, then I turn that might work. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But having a service manual, being all methodical, making sure that you can fix the job in one go. If you have to leave your tools lying around, make sure they're all secure. Any small components that you've taken off, you don't want to be losing those, those kind of things. John, adding lubricant and anti-seize compound to any thread changes the torque requirement for the tightening. It does, you're right, it does, unless it is prescribed to do it. Because if let's say there is a torque setting with anti-seize on there, then then that's appropriate. If you're changing, this is what I was saying about before, maybe you've misunderstood what I'm trying to say. If you're doing stuff in a different way from what the service manual tells you to do it, whilst it may work, whilst it may hold up, it's not going to perform to the same standards. Just like adding a spring washer onto a bolt head, let's say, you're not going to have the same thing. Adding anti-seize to something, or a lubricant, whatever, on a bolt that should not have it, whilst it may be okay, you may not be able to fully trust that torque setting. And bear this in mind, this is another thing I want you to fully understand. When we look back in engineering, look back at mechanics, for the last few years, let's say, you want to talk quite a few years ago, and back now you could apply thread lock, let's say, and everything, and you can kind of forget about that bolt. Okay, well, what happens even today in different industries, what you can do is you'll torque something down, and then you will periodically have to go back and make sure that that's still holding its torque, because of the component that it is, because if it's a high stress component or high rotational component, let's just say because of the heat, you don't apply the thread lock, because that's not going to work. You're going to have to look at different things. So all of a sudden, you can't trust that torque setting. You have to make sure that it's retorqued. Something is overstressed, you have to retorque it again. And it's exactly the same here. You might be adding anti-seize, lubricant, copper grease, whatever, to a thread, because you want to make sure that when you get it out, it'll be fine. And you look at other different things, and you think, right, I'm going to torque it down, I might be adding a spring washer, all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean that you should not go back to it later on at a later point, let's say, and make sure that it's still torqued down properly. And this kind of comes down to, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but this kind of comes down to your general maintenance of your vehicle. Let's say your vehicle, your car, but for us, motorcycles, whatever. To look at any part of the bike and never address it, then you're kind of putting your faith in something that shouldn't really do that. You need to go around the bike. I'm not saying every time you ride, but certainly on a periodically, go around with a torque wrench and just have a look. Is this the right torque setting? Does it still, is it still done properly? When I did my handlebars, okay, I fell foul of this as well, and I fully hold my hand up. When I did my handlebars, changed my handles, I found that the handlebar riser studs, the nut was loose. It virtually came off of my hand. Because I hadn't checked it, because I hadn't thought, well, there's got to be a problem there, isn't there? Terrible, So you just gotta be aware of. So what I'm saying to you is, you can add this, but it doesn't mean that you stop checking things. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so other little tools that you might want to consider getting if you're going to be working on bikes as well. So one of the things here is, I don't know if you can see this, is there. Can you see that? There you go. Yeah, and basically those are feeler gauges. So let's just say you need to check a certain limitation or certain gap on a particular thing. The one thing that I could talk of mostly is not talking about particular Harley engines here. I'm talking about any engine, or older engines, valve shims, and you're talking about spark plug gapping, all that kind of stuff. If you look in the workshop manual, you'll see that there is a particular mil or thousandths of an inch gap. It's got to be clean. It's got to be gap. We use one of these feeler gauges. Very cheap to get, but something for your workshop to get. This is another thing which you get. This has got nothing to do with Harleys at all. This is to do with the Honda, actually. Again, these are specific tools that you may need to get for whatever job that you need to do. So before you embark on a particular job, you may need to research what you need to get. And sometimes there's no way around it. You need that specific tool. So this is for changing shims, valve shims on a Honda, an older Honda, I should say, and basically you just loop it around. It compresses everything. So you can take the shim out, put a new shim in, and away you go. Okay, so there's things like that. You know, talking back to Harleys, you know, the belt tensioner. You know, use these. These are kind of specific. There are other things that you can use, but you know, these kind of things. Daryl, I had the same issue with the torque settings on my riser clamp, pulling the bike out of the gouge on my handles. Yeah. It's. I was really disappointed with that when I found mine really loose, I've got to say. But there we go. Yeah, I don't talk about that. Okay, another thing that you might want to talk about when you're talking about just general, working in the workshop, you have to work to a certain. One of these. Yeah, get yourself one of these little measuring device. I'm trying to look down here to see. If, there you go. Can you see that? There we go. So micrometer caliper. There we go. Those are kind of really good for measuring distances, and if you're trying to be accurate, as accurate as you can, especially where a particular workshop or service manual of whatever you're fixing says it's got to be a particular dimension, whatever. Let's just say that something is broken on your motorcycle and you need to cut a bit of metal, you need to grind it down, let's say, but you need to make sure that it's a particular width, length, whatever. You can use that, you know, and gives you an accurate heading. There we go. John, in my opinion, don't ever use a screwdriver to press pistons back into the caliper. First, a screwdriver is not a pry bar. It could break and possibly injure you. Use the brake pad spreader. Well, I talked about that, John. I talked about that. Yes, you got this. And there we go. Or if you haven't got that, you can use heavy-duty screwdrivers. I'm not saying that you pry it against the. I say you got to watch my first video about when I did it on the front. You can do it. Okay, you can do this. Sorry, John, but you're wrong on this. You can do it. There's always a risk of damage. Yes, of course, there's always a risk, but you can do it. You can just push it back. Push the pistons back with a heavy-duty screwdriver, holding at both ends, not prying it against a disc, not prying it against another part of the caliper, just pulling it back. But you can do it. Sonic's joy of working on motorcycle is gone. My eyesight is not what it used to be. I need glasses and more light source to see properly. Well, do you know what? That's absolutely right. But I think the joy of motorcycle mechanics is kind of gone because of the modern technology on there as well. This is when it comes down to what I was talking right at the start of this, the confidence to do it, because a lot of it is electrically governed now, computer governed. You know, and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to be, you've got to have the confidence to be able to do things mechanically, but also address some of the things that are electrically controlled, or electronically controlled. I think I'm going to do another live show talking about the electronics, which is not really my strong point. Is it anybody's? Let's face it. On the Sport Glide. Not the Sport Glide, sorry, on the Harley Davidson's full stop. But I'm going to talk about modern motorcycles in general. I think I'll leave it with this. When you talk about modern motorcycles these days, especially Harley Davidsons and BMWs and all that sort of stuff, you've got to stop thinking about a positive and a negative wire so much. There is power and there is earthing. But most motorcycles these days, the bigger motorcycles, they have a signal. It's a signal-based system. In the Harley Davidson, it's a camber system. So it's just sending on-off signals, you know, backwards and forwards. So it's not as easy to say, oh, it's a bad earth, that's why that isn't working, or this doesn't work very well because you haven't got power to it. What it is actually a bad signal rather than bad earthing, as it were. You know. Love the channel now. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you. Right, so hopefully, you know, I haven't talked about anything specifically here. I really wanted to talk about, you know, home mechanics, home maintenance, talk about different tools, what you could use, what you should use, what you shouldn't use. I think in general, you're going to build up tools as you go along. You're going to build up confidence as you go along. And you're going to have, you know, as you learn to do, you start off from the simple tasks, and then you build that experience to work on the more tasks. Now, the more complex tasks, right? If, let's say, in your mind, you want to start working on motorcycles, my advice to anybody would be this: whatever bike that you're riding, work on that, but work on the very simple tasks. If you're not confident to work because you've got a brand new motorcycle, let's say, and you absolutely need that to do, you know, to commute to whatever, and you don't want to run the risk of breaking that, okay, but you're desperate to work on motorcycle, you're desperate to get wrenching or whatever, see if you can buy an old beat-up bike, that all you want to do on is practice on. If you can get an old beat-up bike that's exactly the same as yours, or similar kind of model, or similar kind of brand, all that kind of stuff, all the better. I know it's an expense, and I know lots of people won't have the money to do this. I know that, but what I'm just talking about, it's just something that you can physically practice on, because it's all well and good looking in a workshop manual, as I say. It's all well and good looking at a YouTube channel, but what you've got to do is kind of look at what, let's say, what I've told you, and then go and practice it. You need to practice something. You need to work on it. And sometimes just having a dummy bike there, a donor bike, works well. Sometimes you just got an old bike and you've got to fix it anyway, so you learn as you go. But there we go. The new systems are both brilliant and a pain. Yes, they are. I agree. It's pretty expensive to get into some of the specialty electronic tools for troubleshooting. Absolutely right. In fact, that's one of the I'll kind of talk about this in the next live show about but that, yes, different motorcycle manufacturers allow you to do different things. Right now, Harley Davidson with the 2021 bikes, they've changed the ECM, I believe, on the Taurus, I think it is, not the Softails. I don't think so anyway. That means that external tuners can't be used because they're not compatible with them. I think there's a lot of discrimination, not discrimination, but there's a lot of internet chatter saying that, oh, Harley Davidson have done this to stop tuners being working on there, whatever. It could be, there could be, I don't really know what the real reason is why they've changed, and if they're trying to bring everything in-house, why they've changed their ECM and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what their motives are, but the fact is that there's a bit of a catch-up going on with the tuner manufacturers to be able to do that. If I was an electronics expert, I'm sure I could come up with a quick program at home to be able to hack into any ECM and do it. But there we go. Beans, hello Beans. How are you? I'm well, and how are you? Are you well? Good. So anyway, I've gone through quite a few things here, haven't I? So I've talked about different tools, things about, you know, that you are, the longer you work on bikes, the longer you, the more that you work on bikes, you kind of you're going to have to spend money, I'm afraid. You're going to have to spend money in building up your tool arsenal. A lot of these tools you won't use on a regular basis, or you probably use once every few years. But if there was anything, I would always say, and possibly this is the nerd in me, let's say, I would say never sell your bike, but even more, never sell your tools. Never ever sell your tools if you can help it. I know, lots of people are going to be facing issues, but if there's one thing that you could always retain and never throw away, is your tools. Always keep your tools, and build up. Just keep on building up, because a bike can come and go. You can get different bikes, all that sort of stuff. But I've thrown away so many little bits and pieces, little components here and there in the past, and I really wish I hadn't. Tools I keep hold of, but as I say, you will build up, and you'll always have speciality tools. And I've wanted to get rid of these in the past, sell these tools, and I think, no, at some point, you never know, I might build another Honda, I might build another, whatever, cafe racer or something like that. So there's lots of tools that you can get, and the beauty of these kind of tools, like feeler gauges, stuff like that, is that once you've got them for a lifetime. Yeah, I know. So, and don't feel that you have to get the tools at exactly the same time, all at once. As they, you build it, and you watch channel like mine, let's say, and that side over there. Let me show you. That side over there is where I do all my sort of video discussion ones. Over here is where I do more of my workshoppy ones. And you look this, and I've got all these tools in the background. But you can't compare me, let's say, to somebody who's never worked on bikes or never done anything. You can buy a little tool set from your local DIY place, and you start there. You just you work on. But more than anything, and I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, more than anything, it's all the little things. It's all the little bits and pieces that you'll buy that you'll probably use once. Those are the things that cost the money. If you're going to build do a massive repair job on a bike, or you want to build a custom motorcycle for whatever reason. And when I talk about custom motorcycles, I've made videos about this in the past. Custom motorcycles, it doesn't have to be a big flame job and a big, raked out, front forks and all that kind of stuff. It's just making something your own. It can be the simplest thing, or can be quite involved. But you're making something bespoke. You're making something your own. So you're either repairing, or you're bringing something back to life, or you're changing something. But whatever you're doing, you're always going to need tooling to be able to do it, and you're always going to have to. You're going to have to go at your own pace, and you're going to have to learn at your own way. But there we go. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up on the comments here. I just bought a Dyno Jet Power Vision. They definitely have tunes for the new models. Oh, okay. Oh, they do they? Right. And that's it. Okay. I mean, it could be. I say this could be old news, fake news, or whatever. I mean, I've got to say I haven't looked into the new bikes, 2021 bikes, so much. There wasn't a real lot to talk about, really. I've got to say. John, P. Flood. Have you read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance? It's all about motorcycle tour, self-awakening with some maintenance philosophy thrown in. Gumption block is defined. Do you know what? I have read it. I haven't read it in years and years. So I don't. There's another great book, and I've forgotten what that's called as well. But anyway, so yes, I'll take your word for it, John, but I haven't read it in many ways. Good advice on tools that sometimes are necessary, but it should be one of the last decisions. Yeah, different angles work better. Thank you, John. Thank you. Yes, I completely agree. I have tools kept for 40 years and still use them all the time. Chippy by trade. There we go. Yeah, fantastic. I think, for me, I love tools. So, if I am. If anybody ever remembers, there's an old comedy program from a few years ago called Home Improvement, where the guy would be selling tools and he'd be going, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, probably sorry, I've just embarrassed myself there. But I love tools, any kind of tool. I love tools. So Richard, I had to buy Imperial tools since owning a Harley. Yeah, actually, Harley's a funny one, and I'm sure other manufacturers that might be similar, and that they have imperial and also metric sizes on them as well, which is really weird. But yeah, imperial tools, which is real pain in the ass. And also what you find as well, you'll have to find hold on, normal can you see that, guys? Standard sockets, standard size sockets, but you're going to have to buy long reach sockets as well. Lots of jobs on a Harley require long reach sockets, so that's just something. And do you know what? That's what happens really. You end up working on a job, working on a bike. You get a brand new motorcycle, and then you think, crikey, I need a particular tool, or I need a particular socket, whatever, for that task. That's what happens, any new motorcycle that you do. So what I was trying to say before about, you've got a new motorcycle, whatever, or an old motorcycle, you just kind of need to, you need to find out which tools you need to do the job, or if you can borrow tools. You need to be able to have practice and build up your kind of knowledge, whatever. And I think, as I say, I've always said it's always about having a go. And if you're not confident, if you can ever, with a professional mechanic, if you can ever sit in and watch them do it, a lot of them won't let you do it, because obviously potentially it's going to take away their future trade. I get that. But if you can watch how other people do it, or if you've got a friend who's really into their mechanics, whatever. And I think, you never stop learning about any kind of mechanics, and you'll always find something, and using tools from any discipline, I think you can always find it, whether you're a chippy, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a medical person. There's always a tool that is right for the job, and there's always a tool that you might be able to use for something else as well. Anyway, look, I'm going to end it there, because I've been on for 1 hour and 25, and that's a long period of time. Thanks so much for joining in. Hopefully you've got a good idea of what I'm talking about. It's not always easy trying to produce videos about like how-to videos, how to fix a bike, or how to change brake pads or whatever. Because one of the problems is that it's about time. The stuff that you can do in real time by yourself, for me, it's a lot quicker. I could do it a lot quicker than having to explain it and set up the camera as well. So it's sometimes I feel for you people on YouTube or anything like this who are trying to demonstrate. So also, I've got to say this, I'm not trying to defend myself or anybody. Sometimes we come out with verbal diarrhea. Sometimes we use the wrong words, and you don't know why you've used it. You kind of said something wrong, or you've used the wrong word. It happens. It happens, It's the way it is. But anyway, look, there's lots of stuff. I was going to talk more about electronic-y type tools and everything like that. I'm going to leave that for another live session. I think I might do one on Thursday if you're about. But anyway, look, it's Santos Riviera. Goodbye from Seaside, California. I've got to get to work. Hey, Santos, have a great day at work. I know Seaside, California very well, actually. Anyway, Mindful Gus, good on you, mate. Good on you, mate. Thanks very much. Lucas, Daryl, thanks very much. Right, so I hope you all enjoyed that. Lots to discuss, I know, but hopefully lots to digest, lots to think about. Yeah, good, bad, ugly. Right, catch you on the next live stream, whenever that is. Right, I'm going to end this now, but hopefully it's been enjoyable to watch. Right, on to the next one. I'll let you know for definite if I'm going to do one on Thursday, what sort of time. It'll be my day off. I've got to go off to work myself now because I'm working nights for the next 2 nights. But I catch you again. Ta-da. Enjoy. Got to end that.